So in this video, I'd like to talk you through how to set up your first event on GivePanel Events. So first thing we're going to do from our dashboard is navigate to the events registration section. So under campaigns, click event registration. We're then going to click create event. So the first thing you do is fill out your event name. And in order to set up your event, you'll have to go through all of these 5 sections. So you go through one by one. So event name and event description. You can then choose whether it's a single day event or a multiple day event. So for this one, I'm going to say single day, and I'm going to choose the event date and time. Lovely. And then we're going to just choose whether it's a charity owned, a DIY supporter led or a third party event. So for this one, I'm going to say it's a charity owned event and our event type is running. We're then going to add in our location and the distance. In this section here, we need to add in our JustGiving Event ID and JustGiving campaign short name. So that allows you to connect the fundraising pages that are set up here with the event on your JustGiving platform. So before you come into here, you'll obviously want to set up your event and your campaign directly on JustGiving. So I'm going to put in an event ID here. And for now, I'm going to leave the campaign short name blank, but in your instance, you'd add in the campaign short name here. And that's just the section that's at the end of the JustGiving campaign URL. At the bottom here, I'm going to decide whether I want tickets and payments to be taken for this event. So for registration fees, obviously you'll have this toggled on. If you allow team registration and fundraising, so that's if someone registers and wants to add in additional registrations or wants to create a team, you can toggle this on and off. And very importantly, particularly if you're using this for third-party events and you've got a set number of places, whether you've got a registration limit. So that limits the number of people that can register for this event. So in this example, I'm going to turn it on and say I've got 30 places. You can choose to close this event when registration limit is reached, or you can choose to not do that and manually close it. It's completely up to you. But for now, I'm going to select close this event when registration limit is reached and click Save Changes. It will then take me on to the second section, which is called Items, and this is where we create our various ticket types. So to create a ticket type, we click Create Ticket, and there's a standard ticket or a group ticket. So I'm going to create a standard ticket, and for this one, I'm going to choose an adults ticket. And what's really good about the event builder here in GivePanel Events is that you get a preview on the right hand side of how everything looks, which is very useful as you're sort of going along. So an adult ticket, you can choose a ticket description and that will pop up underneath the ticket. In a moment I'll be able to show you that. And then you choose your age restrictions. So built into GivePanel Events are 2 types of age restrictions. Over 18 years old means that they will have to create their JustGiving page and log into JustGiving in order to register, and they'll also be served the email journey that you build. Under 18-year-olds by default will not have JustGiving pages needing to be created and will not go on an email journey. So that's something that you need to kind of think about when you're building this. So for this one, obviously over 18 years old, we can then choose our ticket price and whether you want VAT to be displayed on the ticket, and that will automatically populate at 20%. We can then choose a purchase limit. So if, for example, you're using this for a third-party event like the Great North Run, and you only want one person to register at a time, and any additional registrants need to create their own registration, you'll want to put a purchase limit here to say that only one ticket can be purchased per registration. If you allow people to register for challenge events on behalf of other people, then obviously you can increase this here. We then can choose the number of tickets that are available for that particular ticket type. So if in an event, you're allowed to have 300 adults and 200 children, you can add that here. And we can also add a date available range. So if you have a specific time period that those tickets can be sold, you can create this here. This is really handy for if you're doing early bird tickets. You can select a certain date range for those early birds that have a different price range, and then a second date range for the standard tickets that have a higher price. So that's a really useful feature. Once we're happy, I'm going to click Create Ticket. And then you can see here on the right hand side that ticket type has popped up with all the information that I put in. So you can create lots of different ticket types. So I'm also going to create a child's ticket. And here I'm going to select under 18 years old, and it's going to be half the price of an adult's ticket in this example. And again, you've got the number available, the date available, and the purchase limits here that you can use. So I'm going to create that ticket, and I can see that pops up here. We also have within the ticket builder group tickets. So a group ticket is basically the grouping of tickets together. So if, for example, you wanted to create a family ticket, which is 2 adults and 2 children, you can do this here, and then you can decide what price you want to put on that. So for this example, let's say £70. You can also add a description here, so your registrants know exactly what they're purchasing. So this family ticket is for 2 adults and 2 children. And I can click Create Ticket. And again, you'll see that pop up here. Once you're happy with everything, click Save Changes. And you get this lovely green pop-up, it's all saved successfully. Another functionality that we have within the ticket section is the discount codes. You can create multiple discount codes for a specific percentage off or a specific amount off. You can create the label. So for this example, I'm going to say you get 10% off. It does automatically create one for you, or you can change it to whatever you want. You can decide how many you have available and also the date range. So again, another way to kind of build in that early bird functionality. So really, really clever bit of functionality here. So I'm going to create this discount code. And again, make sure you save. Lovely. So we've set up our ticket types and we've set up our discount codes. The next thing we're going to do is set up our registration form. So within an event, you can have multiple registration forms. So if you had, for example, own place runners, ballot runners, and then you also have charity place runners, you can set up 2 separate forms here within the main event. So I'm going to click Create Form, and I'm going to name it. This URL is editable, but it will also kind of pre-populate from what you put in here on the form name. And I'm going to click Create Form. At the moment, there are 2 types of forms. We have the fundraising flow, which means that they have to authenticate and create their JustGiving page right at the beginning of the process. And then we have the registration flow, which is coming in a little while. And that uses the JustGiving claim page functionality, so they can then go and claim their fundraising page afterwards. That one might be useful for people that don't want to use JustGiving or want to kind of fundraise offline. They won't have to log into their JustGiving account and create a JustGiving page at the point of registration. So that's a feature that's coming very soon. So I've created my form, now I want to edit. So there are lots of things that we can do within the registration form editor. It's fully editable, which is fantastic. So the first thing you'll see is some set fields that have already been put in here. So we've got our heading, continue your registration, a bit of text, a subheading. They would have already logged into their JustGiving page in advance of seeing this form. So this will pull through their name and email address from their JustGiving account. And then we've got some optional fields that are automatically pre-populated on. But this is fully editable. So in order to add new fields to the form, we can click Add Field. And there are a few different types here. So we've got some default fields that are kind of set in how they are created. And then we've got custom fields that you can use, and then we've got content types, which are really good for kind of breaking up your form. So within the custom fields, for example, we can choose a drop down, and you'll see that this will drop here at the bottom, and you can move this to wherever you want it to be on your form. And that's the same with any field that you put in. If I choose fundraising target, that will then pop at the bottom, and I can move that up. To go back to the drop down field, this is really useful for if you're asking for things like t-shirt size, or what distance do you want to take on, or anything really where they need to choose from a range of options, dietary requirements. So for this example, I'm going to choose t-shirt size. You can decide whether the drop down is required or not. And then we can choose a bit of helper text if you want to help supporters understand what's being asked of them. Then we have our drop-down options. So in this example, we're talking about t-shirt sizes. And what you can also do is set options limit. So this is really helpful for if you're kind of managing inventory or stock. So if we set an options limit, you can choose the number of each size of the t-shirt that is available, for example. You can also choose another option, which may be do not want a t-shirt, and you can add as many options as you want and reorder them as you build your drop down. And again, you'll see this start to come together on the right hand side on the preview, and on the drop down you can see it lets the supporter know how many of that item are available, so really good for merchandise, that type of thing. You can also add in an other option. So if it's a drop down where you're asking a certain question, but actually if they don't want to choose one of the options, you want them to be able to kind of manually add an answer, they can choose other, and that will create a related field. So if they choose other on that drop down, you can choose to either have a short text box pop up or a long text box pop up, and you can, say tell us more, or you can give them a bit more information about what you want them to put into the text field. And you can have a placeholder there, so if you want some text to be kind of pre-populated in that long text field, you can add that in. You can also add a character limit, so if you don't want people sending you essays in response to these options, then you can choose a character limit here. So that's just a really helpful bit of functionality there. Once you're happy with that field, click Save Changes, and then that field, t-shirt size that we just worked on, will be there. There are lots of other fields to kind of look at and play with. We have emergency contact, which is really useful. With emergency contact, if I show you here on the right hand side, it will automatically pop up with the contact full name, contact email address and phone number. So those are kind of the preset fields within the emergency contact form field. Then we also have checkboxes, radio buttons, dates, numbers. If you want to collect address, we have an address field here. So I can scroll down and show you that. And then also within the address field, you can make that required or not required. You can enable address lookup, which I think usually is the preferred option. And you can choose to display country or not. And you can also choose to restrict it to the UK or not. All of the fields within the address field are editable, so if you want to call it something different, if you've got county, state, city, town, postcode, zip code, depending on where you are in the world, you have the options to open these and edit what these fields are called. So there's a few options here. Once you're happy with your address field, you can click Save Changes, and that will have saved. So now if I scroll to the address section, we can see that it's actually using the address finder rather than having all the fields laid out. So there's lots of things that you can add onto your registration form. The other thing to think about is how you're getting supporters to register. So if they're just registering for themselves and they don't have the ability to add additional people when you set up the settings at the beginning, then we don't need to kind of worry about these other sections. But if they are able to register others, if we click Register Others, this will show what information is shown on the form that primary registrant has to fill out for other people. So in a lot of cases when you're registering other people, actually you're not going to know their emergency contact, you might not know what their fundraising target is, their address is, but you do know their name and their email address. So what you can do is toggle off all those additional fields that you've added in, and actually for the primary registrant, all they need to do is add the first name, last name and email address of that secondary registrant. And then what will happen is the secondary registrant will receive an email to fill out the rest of those fields. And you can see that here on the third section, which is confirm registration. So that's what the form looks like for those secondary registrations. So they can, accept the terms and conditions on their own behalf, add in their own date of birth, add in their own address, etc. Additionally, on the Register Other sections, if you are adding children's tickets into your basket as a primary registrant, you may not need to add in all of this information. You might not need to put emergency contact because obviously as the primary registrant, you're there with them. So you can again toggle off all of these different fields, and all the person would need to do is add in the first name of the child, the last name, and they will, for safeguarding purposes, have to add the email address of another adult email address that is on that particular registration. So that's an overview of the registration form. Once you're happy with it, click Save Form. Lovely. So after that, a few things to think about and to look at are the settings and the brandings within the form. So the settings will show you, what the form name is, what the form URL path is, but also if you're sharing this URL with people, what it looks like when it pops up on someone's WhatsApp or on someone's Facebook, for example. So you can add in a description, a thumbnail and an icon here. You can also decide within your form whether you want to enable team fundraising and whether you want to set a limit on the number of registrations allowed for that form. So there are a few different places to put limits within the event builder. We also have Google Tag Manager and cookie preferences here, so you can add in your own cookie preferences and a link to your own cookie policy and relabel all of this information here. And you can also toggle on the Google Tag Manager and add your GTM container ID here. And then you can report on where your registrations are coming from, which is really helpful for your marketing teams. Within your branding, this is where you will add in the logo and the banner image for the registration form. You can add in your brand fonts. We've got a few options here. And obviously all of your kind of brand colours can be changed and edited throughout links, headings, text, buttons, all of that. So this is really important that you make sure that you customise this how you want it to align with your branding. So the final thing I just wanted to show you on registration forms is the ticket selection. So you can choose which tickets you want to show. So there may be different phases of your recruitment where you're just recruiting adults, or you switch the family tickets later on. We did sort of talk about the date ranges that you can have on tickets, but also you can manually choose to hide certain ticket types. So if I toggle off family ticket, we can see that that's gone. So that's just an option that's there for you should you wish to use it. So once you're happy with your form, you can also edit what the confirmation page looks like. So this is the confirmation page once they've signed up. All of this copy is editable. We've preset it so that there's some really nice call to action. So viewing your fundraising page, getting your first donation, but you don't have to have these all on there. So you can edit that all through these sections here. Just don't forget to save when you're finished. The next thing we'll look at is the fundraiser. So these are the JustGiving pages that are created when people sign into their JustGiving account and register for your event. So you'll want to upload an image, create a fundraiser title, put a description that's going to be on their JustGiving page, and you can set a default fundraising target, which is obviously really useful for your event. You can then decide who gets to create a fundraising page. So as a reminder, anyone under 18 will not have a fundraising page created. However, you can decide that all adults create a fundraising page, or actually only the primary registrant. So if you're someone that registers and then adds 2 additional adults onto your ticket, you can create it so that only you create the fundraising page and the others don't. Or you can have it that all adults, or you can also add it as supporter choice, so the registrant themselves decides who gets to create a fundraising page. If you have teams enabled, you'll need to add in the information for teams as well as individuals before you can save those changes. And you'll have a preview here on the right hand side of what your JustGiving pages will look like. And then the final section is to look at your emails. So anyone that creates, registers on your GivePanel events will go on an automated tailored journey of your choice that you create within your GivePanel event settings here. So the first thing you'll be presented with is the settings. So you'll want to create your from name, from email address, the reply to email address. So it may be that you want it to come from a certain person, but actually the responses need to go to a generic inbox. You can also edit the footer here, and you can also include an exclusions list. So if you have certain supporters or people on your CRM that even if they register, you don't want them to receive any emails for whatever reason, you can add that here. Once you're happy with your settings, click Save Changes, and then have a look at your branding. So the branding here only applies to the transaction emails for the event, so I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. So what you'll want to do is upload a logo, a header image. You can change the font, the background colour. All of these hex codes are editable, and you'll get a really handy preview here on the right hand side as to what that will look like. So you can add in all of your branding colours here. Then once you've made a change, there's also a hex code picker, which is great. And once you're happy with that, then click Save Changes. And then in the email editor, you're presented with 2 sections. One is your stewardship emails and one is your transaction emails. So the transaction emails are the emails that we've just created the branding for. And those are pre-built already within GivePanel. They are editable, but they will go out kind of automatically. So the registration confirmation obviously goes as soon as someone registers. The confirm secondary registration request will go out to any secondary registrants you've added into your basket when you registered. And those are the 2 main ones to think about at the moment. So if I go into registration confirmation, we can see it tells you at the top exactly when it gets triggered. And then you can edit the subject line, you can edit all of your information here. There are various merge tags that you can sort of bring into the email, and all of the branding that you set previously will show here. You can send a test email, which is really handy to see what it looks like. And that's the same for the secondary confirmation. So this is where you've registered someone else. And there's a link in there for them to fill out their form to finalise their registration. We then have the stewardship emails. So if we go into edit, you may be familiar with this email builder. So this is the exact same email builder that we use for DIY and virtual campaigns. So if I click add new email, if I click here on new email, there are 2 types. So there's a personal email and a branded email, and hopefully you're familiar with that already. So if I click create branded email, you've got your triggers and your conditions, and there are lots of videos that we can share as to how to use these triggers and conditions. And this is for your stewardship journey. So this is for your good luck messaging, your training messaging, your congrats messaging, and these can be scheduled at various points after registration, before the event date, after the event date. And you've got various conditions here that you can add in. So for your fundraising target or the amount raised, you can start to kind of segment your milestone email journeys using this email builder. Obviously, the subject line is editable, and you can choose to add your logo or not. And then obviously you can write your message here. You can also send a test email within this, and you can preview the email also. So I'm just going to X out of that for now. And that's an overview of how to build your first event. Hopefully that was really helpful, but if you've got any questions at all, do reach out to us.